A single gunshot echoed across the golden plains of New Mexico Territory, 1879, as Logan Granger watched the silhouette of yet another trespasser scramble back over his property line. The man's reputation as the most territorial landowner in Santa Rosa had been hard-earned through years of defending every inch of his 1,000 acres against cattle thieves, land grabbers, and the railroad men who seemed determined to slice through his inheritance like a knife through warm butter. The rifle barrel still smoked in his calloused hands as he lowered it, squinting against the harsh afternoon sun. His ranch, Whispering Pines, stood as a testament to his father's vision and his own stubborn determination to keep it whole and untouched. 28 years of age, Logan had known little beyond the boundaries of this land, the dirt beneath his boots more familiar to him than the touch of a woman's hand. "That's the third one this week," Logan muttered to himself, slinging the Winchester over his shoulder. His loyal cattle dog, Rusty, circled his legs, tail wagging in anticipation of the walk back to the main house. The vast expanse of his property stretched before him, rolling hills dotted with ponderosa pines, creek beds that bubbled with clear water even in the driest months, and pastures where his cattle grazed peacefully. It was everything a man could want, or so he told himself on lonely nights when the emptiness of his large farmhouse seemed to mock him. His ranch hands kept their distance whenever Logan was in one of his moods, which had become more frequent since the news that the Southwestern Railroad Company had been purchasing land just north of his property. Logan knew what was coming: men in expensive suits offering him fair market value for land that had been in his family for 2 generations, land that had cost his father everything, including his life. The main house came into view as Logan crested the final hill. A 2-story structure built from pine harvested on the property itself, with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Empty rocking chairs swayed gently in the breeze chairs that his mother had once insisted upon, claiming that a proper home needed a place to watch the world go by. She'd been gone 5 years now, leaving Logan truly alone. Inside, he placed his rifle in the rack by the door and poured himself a glass of whiskey, downing it in one burning gulp. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of settling wood and the distant lowing of cattle. A life of solitude had suited him well enough, or so he'd convinced himself. The town of Santa Rosa lay just 15 miles to the east, but Logan rarely ventured there except for supplies and the occasional necessary business. "Another fine day of keeping the world at bay," he said to Rusty, who had settled at his feet. The dog's eyes, intelligent and questioning, seemed to hold more wisdom than most men Logan had encountered. As night fell across the New Mexico landscape, Logan sat on his porch, cleaning his rifle by lamplight. Tomorrow would bring more of the same, patrolling his borders, managing his herd, and keeping the outside world firmly outside. It was a life he'd chosen, or perhaps a life that had chosen him. Either way, he'd long ago accepted that some men were meant to stand alone. The sun hadn't yet cleared the eastern horizon when Logan was already mounted on his stallion, Thunder, riding the southwestern boundary of his property. This section bordered the drought-stricken farmland that had been abandoned by the Miller family last season. Logan had considered purchasing it himself, not because he needed more land, but to prevent others from settling too close. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of sage and pine as he guided Thunder along the fence line. Something caught his eye near a cluster of junipers, a flash of movement where there shouldn't be any. Logan's hand instinctively moved to his holstered revolver as he approached cautiously. "Show yourself," he called out, voice harsh against the morning quiet. "You're trespassing on Granger property." The junipers rustled, and to Logan's surprise, a woman emerged. She stood tall despite her obvious exhaustion, wearing a travel-worn dress that might once have been blue, but was now stained with the dust of the trail. Her honey-colored hair was pulled back in a practical braid, wisps escaping to frame a face that bore both determination and trepidation. "She couldn't have been more than 25, Mr. Granger," she called, her voice steady despite the wariness in her eyes. "Logan Granger." Logan's hand remained on his pistol, though he didn't draw it. "Who's asking?" "My name is Sophia Summers." She took a tentative step forward, hands visible at her sides to show she was unarmed. "I've come a long way to find you." "You're trespassing, Miss Summers," Logan replied, unmoved by her apparent fatigue or the fact that she was the first woman he'd seen on his property in months. "State your business or leave." Sophia straightened her shoulders, meeting his gaze directly. "I've come about your advertisement." Logan frowned, genuinely confused. "Advertisement? I haven't placed any advertisement." "Yes, you have," she insisted, reaching into a small leather satchel at her side and pulling out a folded newspaper clipping. "Here. In the Chicago Tribune 3 months ago." Logan dismounted, keeping a cautious distance as she held out the paper. Taking it, he scanned the words with growing disbelief. "Seeking correspondence with respectable woman of good character and hardy constitution. Owner of substantial cattle ranch in New Mexico territory. Marriage possible for suitable candidate. Inquire to L. Granger, Whispering Pines Ranch, Santa Rosa." "I never wrote this," Logan said flatly, handing the clipping back to her. "Someone's playing a cruel joke, Miss Summers. On both of us, it seems." Sophia's expression faltered for the first time. "But I received letters, 3 of them signed by you." "Not possible," Logan insisted. "I haven't written to anyone, much less advertised for a wife." The word felt strange in his mouth. "Then I've been deceived," she said quietly, a flash of vulnerability crossing her features before determination returned. "Nevertheless, I'm here now. I've sold everything I own to make this journey." Logan studied her more carefully. Despite the travel dust, her clothes were of good quality. Her speech was educated, her posture refined. She was clearly no desperate drifter or common swindler. Something about her story rang true, even if the advertisement was false. "Where's your luggage?" he asked, looking around. "Did you walk here from town?" "I arrived in Santa Rosa yesterday." "The station master pointed me toward your ranch, but the wagon driver would only bring me as far as the Miller property. Said you had a habit of shooting at visitors." A hint of disapproval colored her tone. "I've been walking since dawn." Logan felt a flicker of guilt, quickly suppressed. "You still shouldn't be here. Whatever game someone's playing, it has nothing to do with me." "Perhaps not," Sophia conceded, "but I've traveled 2,000 miles based on promises made in your name. I believe I'm at least owed the courtesy of a proper conversation, and perhaps some assistance in determining what to do next." Her reasonableness irritated Logan more than pleading would have. It left him with no justifiable reason to send her away immediately. He glanced at the sun, now fully risen. It would be a hot day, and the woman, regardless of how she came to be here, looked exhausted. "I can offer you water and a meal," he said reluctantly. "Then we'll figure out who's behind this deception and get you back to town." Relief washed over Sophia's face. "Thank you, Mr. Granger." Logan remounted Thunder, then extended his hand down to her. "It's faster if you ride with me." Sophia hesitated only briefly before accepting his help. Her hand was surprisingly strong as he pulled her up behind him. She settled onto the horse, maintaining a proper distance between them that Logan found himself oddly appreciative of. "Hold on," he instructed gruffly, and felt her hands lightly grasp his sides. As they rode toward the main house, Logan's mind raced. Who would have placed such an advertisement? He had few friends and many who disliked his standoffish nature, but this seemed an elaborate prank even for his most persistent detractors. And the woman behind him, what kind of woman answered advertisements for mail-order brides? He felt her sway slightly as fatigue caught up with her. Despite himself, Logan slowed Thunder's pace to make the ride gentler. "Almost there," he said, surprising himself with the softness in his voice. Just over that rise. When they crested the hill and Whispering Pines Ranch came into full view, he heard Sophia catch her breath. "It's beautiful," she murmured. The letters described it, but Logan felt an unexpected surge of pride. "My father built most of it. I added the north pasture and the new barn." As they approached the house, Logan noticed his ranch foreman, Henry Wilson, watching their arrival with undisguised curiosity. The older man had been with the ranch since Logan's father's time and was the closest thing to family Logan had left. "Looks like we have company, boss," Henry called as Logan helped Sophia dismount. "Unexpected company," Logan replied pointedly. "Miss Summers, this is Henry Wilson, my foreman. Henry, this is Miss Sophia Summers. She's come under some confusion regarding an advertisement someone placed in my name." Henry's eyebrows shot up, and something flickered across his weathered face that Logan couldn't quite identify. "An advertisement, you say? Well, that's interesting. Pleased to meet you, Miss Summers." "Likewise, Mr. Wilson," Sophia replied politely, though Logan noticed she was studying the older man with newfound interest. "Henry, have Mrs. Finch prepare some breakfast for our guest," Logan instructed, referring to his housekeeper who came in 3 times a week from town. "And see that Thunder gets water and grain." "Right away," Henry nodded, taking the horse's reins. As he led Thunder away, Logan caught him glancing back at Sophia with what looked suspiciously like approval. Logan escorted Sophia into the house, suddenly aware of how sparse and masculine the interior must appear to a woman's eye. His mother's touches had faded over the years, replaced by practicality and function rather than comfort or beauty. "Please sit," he gestured to the kitchen table. "Mrs. Finch makes good coffee if you're partial to it." "I am, thank you." Sophia sat, placing her small satchel beside her chair. Up close, in the better light of the kitchen, Logan could see that she was quite pretty, with clear blue eyes that missed nothing and a determined set to her jaw. "These letters," Logan said, cutting straight to the matter at hand. "Do you have them with you?" Sophia nodded, reaching into her satchel to produce 3 envelopes, each bearing the Whispering Pines Ranch return address written in a flowing script that Logan immediately knew was not his own cramped handwriting. He took them, scanning the contents with growing disbelief. The letters described his ranch accurately, spoke of his cattle operation with knowledge only someone familiar with Whispering Pines would possess, and portrayed him as a hard-working, principled man seeking companionship after years of solitude. While not entirely inaccurate, the portrait painted was far more flattering than Logan would have described himself. More disturbing was how the letters gradually became more personal, expressing loneliness and a desire for partnership that Logan had never admitted even to himself. "Someone knows my business well," he muttered, "and has taken considerable liberties." Mrs. Finch entered then, a plump, motherly woman who had been caring for Logan's household needs since his mother's death. She stopped short at the sight of Sophia, surprise and delight lighting her face. "Why, who do we have here?" she exclaimed. "Mrs. Finch, this is Miss Summers," Logan said, noticing how the housekeeper's eyes darted between them speculatively. "She's here due to a misunderstanding that we're sorting out. She could use some breakfast after her journey. Of course, of course. Poor dear looks half-starved. Mrs. Finch bustled about the kitchen, shooting curious glances at Sophia. I'll make my special flapjacks. And bacon. Growing boys and traveling girls both need proper feeding. Logan cleared his throat uncomfortably. Miss Summers won't be staying long. Just until we determine who's been forging letters in my name. Mrs. Finch paused in her preparations, giving Logan a look he couldn't quite interpret. Is that so? Well, food first, investigations after. That's my motto. As the kitchen filled with the aroma of coffee and frying bacon, Logan found himself in the unusual position of having a young, unmarried woman at his table and no clear idea of how to proceed. Social niceties had never been his strong suit. Tell me about Chicago, he finally said, if only to break the silence that had fallen between them. It's different from here, Sophia replied, her hands curled around the coffee mug Mrs. Finch had provided. Crowded, loud, always moving. She looked up, meeting his eyes. I worked as a school teacher there after my parents passed. The city never quite felt like home. And yet you left it based on letters from a stranger, Logan pointed out. That seems reckless. A flash of defiance crossed her face. Perhaps. Or perhaps I saw an opportunity for something different. The letters spoke of partnership, Mr. Granger, of building something together. That's not an offer a woman in my position encounters often. Your position, a woman alone with no family connections. In Chicago, my options were limited to continuing as a schoolteacher until I became too old to teach, or marrying one of the few uninspiring suitors who showed interest, usually widowers seeking someone to raise their children. Logan considered this. He'd never given much thought to the constraints women faced in their choices. His own life had been shaped by inheritance and circumstance, but at least he'd had the freedom to determine how he lived within those boundaries. Still, he said, coming all this way on the strength of a few letters. The letters were very convincing, Sophia said quietly. They spoke of a man who valued honesty, hard work, and loyalty, who built something meaningful and wished to share it with someone who would appreciate it as he did. She looked around the kitchen, taking in the solid craftsmanship of the house. And that much, at least, appears to be true. Logan felt strangely exposed, as though she could see past his gruff exterior to something he'd kept hidden even from himself. He was saved from responding by Mrs. Finch placing plates before them, heaped with golden flapjacks and crisp bacon. Eat up, the housekeeper instructed, giving Logan a pointed look that clearly said he should mind his manners. Nothing sorts itself out on an empty stomach. They ate in relative silence, Logan surprised by Sophia's healthy appetite after her journey. When they finished, he helped Mrs. Finch clear the dishes, aware of Sophia watching his movements with curious eyes. I need to check on the north pasture, Logan said, discomfort growing under her steady gaze. Henry can take you back to town once you're rested. Actually, Sophia replied, standing, I'd like to see this ranch that was described so vividly in those letters. Perhaps it will help us determine who wrote them. Logan hesitated. Taking her on a tour of Whispering Pines seemed to validate her presence here, which went against his instinct to resolve this matter quickly and return to his solitary routine. Yet something in her steady gaze challenged him, making a refusal seem churlish. Very well, he conceded, but we'll ride. It's too large to tour on foot. Sophia's smile, the first genuine one he'd seen from her, transformed her face, lighting her eyes and softening the determined set of her jaw. I'd like that very much. Something shifted in Logan's chest at the sight, a brief loosening of the constant tension he carried. He dismissed it immediately, focusing instead on the practical matter of finding a suitable mount for his unexpected guest. Outside, they found Henry already waiting with 2 saddled horses, Thunder for Logan, and a gentle mare named Daisy for Sophia. "Thought you might be showing Miss Summers around," Henry said, unable to hide his satisfied expression. "Daisy here is steady as they come." Logan shot him a suspicious look. "You're being mighty accommodating, Henry. Just being hospitable, boss," the foreman replied innocently. "Like your father would have wanted." Sophia approached Daisy, stroking the mare's neck with evident comfort around horses. "She's lovely." "Do you ride side saddle or astride, Mr. Granger?" "Astride," Logan replied, then realized she was asking about herself. "Oh, well, whatever you're comfortable with, I suppose." "Astride, then," she said decisively. "I never saw much sense in the alternative, though my finishing school instructors would be scandalized." With surprising agility, Sophia gathered her skirts and mounted Daisy, adjusting herself in the saddle with the ease of someone who had spent considerable time on horseback. Another piece of information that didn't quite fit Logan's forming impression of a city schoolteacher. As they rode away from the main house, Henry called after them, "Take your time. I'll handle things here." Logan shook his head, increasingly certain that his foreman knew more about this situation than he was letting on. But that was a conversation for later. For now, he had 1,000 acres to show to a woman who had traveled 2,000 miles based on false promises made in his name. They rode in companionable silence at first, Sophia taking in the expansive views with evident appreciation. The late morning sun bathed the landscape in golden light, highlighting the varying shades of green and brown that made up Whispering Pines Ranch. "The letters mentioned a creek with a special meaning to you," Sophia said after they had ridden for nearly half an hour. "Silver Creek, I believe it was called." Logan looked at her sharply. Silver Creek was indeed special to him. It was where his father had taught him to fish, where his mother had sketched on summer afternoons, and where he had scattered both their ashes according to their wishes. "Yes," he said cautiously. "It's on the eastern boundary. Would you show it to me?" she asked, meeting his gaze directly. The letters described it as the heart of Whispering Pines. Logan hesitated, then nodded, turning Thunder toward the east. Whoever had written those letters knew him far better than he was comfortable with. Silver Creek was indeed how he thought of his ranch, not in terms of acreage or cattle counts, but as the living, flowing heart that gave life to everything around it. They rode another 20 minutes before the sound of running water reached them. The creek appeared through a stand of cottonwoods, sunlight dancing on its surface as it wound through the property. Logan dismounted, helping Sophia down from Daisy. She thanked him with a nod, then walked to the creek's edge, gazing into the clear water where small fish darted among the stones. "It's exactly as described," she said softly. "Water so clear you can count the speckles on the trout's back, and when the sun hits it just right, it looks like liquid silver flowing through the land." Logan felt a chill run through him. Those weren't just accurate words. They were his own, spoken at his mother's memorial to describe why his parents had chosen this place to build their lives. Who could have written this? He wondered aloud, more to himself than to Sophia. She turned to him, studying his face with those perceptive blue eyes. "Someone who knows you well, someone who cares about you enough to want to see you happy. By deceiving an innocent woman and sending her across the country on false pretenses," Logan scoffed. "That's a strange way of showing care." "Perhaps," Sophia acknowledged, "but perhaps they simply saw something you couldn't or wouldn't see yourself." "And what's that?" he asked, defensive. "That this beautiful place, for all its grandeur, must be lonely for one man alone." Her voice held no judgment, only understanding. Logan looked away, uncomfortable with her insight. "I chose this life. Did you?" she challenged gently. Or did you inherit it along with this land?" Before he could form a response, the crack of a rifle shot echoed across the creek, followed by the thud of a bullet hitting a nearby tree. Logan reacted instantly, pulling Sophia down behind a large boulder. "Stay down," he ordered, drawing his revolver and scanning the tree line across the creek. Another shot rang out, splintering bark just above their heads. Sophia pressed herself against the boulder, eyes wide but remarkably steady. "Who's shooting at us?" "Could be anyone," Logan muttered. "Rustlers, land grabbers, railroad men." He peered cautiously around the edge of the boulder. "Whoever it is, they're on my land where they don't belong." He spotted movement in the trees across the creek, 3 men on horseback, rifles raised. One fired again, the bullet ricocheting off the boulder with a sharp whine. "We're pinned down," Logan said, frustration evident in his voice. "Thunder and Daisy have bolted." "What will they do?" Sophia asked, her voice remarkably calm given the circumstances. "If they're rustlers, they'll try to drive off some cattle while we're stuck here," Logan replied. "If they're land grabbers or railroad men, they might be trying to scare me into selling." "Or they might be after me," Sophia suggested quietly. Logan looked at her in surprise. "Why would anyone be after you? Chicago has its share of desperate men," she said. "I rejected a proposal from one before I left, a man with connections and a temper. He didn't take it well." Another shot rang out, closer this time. Logan returned fire, forcing the men to take cover. "We need to move," he decided. "There's a hunting cabin about half a mile downstream. If we stay low and use the creek bank as cover, we might make it." Sophia nodded, gathering her skirts in preparation. "Lead the way." Logan was impressed by her composure. Most city women would be hysterical by now, yet Sophia seemed to be assessing the situation with a clear head. He fired one more shot toward their attackers, then gripped Sophia's hand. "Ready? We run when I say run, and don't stop until I tell you to. Stay low and follow the creek bank." "Understood," she said, her hand firm in his. "Now." They burst from behind the boulder, running bent over along the creek bank as shots kicked up dirt around them. Logan kept himself between Sophia and the attackers, firing back occasionally to keep them at bay. Her skirts hampered her speed somewhat, but she managed to keep pace, her breath coming in controlled gasps. After what seemed like an eternity, the small hunting cabin came into view, nestled among a stand of pine trees near the creek. They made a final dash for it, bullets splintering wood as they reached the door. Logan pushed it open, hurrying Sophia inside before slamming it shut and dropping the heavy wooden bar into place. The cabin was small, one room with a rough bed, table, and wood stove. 2 narrow windows provided limited visibility but could also be secured with wooden shutters. "Are you hit?" Logan asked, quickly checking Sophia for injuries. "No," she shook her head, breathing hard from the run but otherwise composed. "You're bleeding." Logan glanced down to see a tear in his shirt sleeve, blood seeping through. "Just a graze. I've had worse." He moved to the windows, closing and securing the shutters before checking his revolver. 4 bullets left. The cabin had emergency supplies, including an old rifle he kept loaded for hunting, plus ammunition. "They'll be coming," he said grimly. "This cabin isn't exactly a fortress." Sophia had already moved to a small cupboard, retrieving a canteen of water and a folded cloth. "Let me see your arm first." Logan hesitated, then extended his wounded arm. Her touch was gentle but efficient as she pushed up his sleeve and cleaned the graze. It was indeed minor. The bullet had barely broken skin, leaving a shallow furrow across his upper arm. "You've done this before," he observed as she wrapped the cloth around his arm with practiced movements. "I volunteered at a hospital during the war," she explained. "I was young, but they needed all the help they could get." She tied off the bandage with a neat knot. There, it should hold. Thank you. Logan checked the windows again. No sign of them yet, but they'll have to approach through open ground. That gives us some advantage. Sophia stood, brushing dust from her skirt. What's your plan? Hold them off until help comes, Logan said. Henry will have heard the shots and will bring the ranch hands. We just need to last until then. And if they try to burn us out? Logan looked at her in surprise. It was a tactically sound question, showing more strategic thinking than he would have expected. The cabin's mostly stone, he explained. They could try, but it wouldn't catch easily. Plus, the creek's right there if we need water. Sophia nodded, then began systematically checking the cabin's contents. She found a second canteen, some jerky, and to Logan's surprise pulled out a small Derringer pistol from a hidden compartment in the table. Your father believed in being prepared, she said, noting his expression. She checked the Derringer with familiar ease. 2 shots, better than nothing. How did you know that was there? Logan asked, suspicion flaring. I didn't, Sophia admitted, but my father always said that any good hunting cabin has at least one hidden weapon. She handed him the small pistol. You'll make better use of this than I would. Logan took it, studying her with new eyes. This woman was far more than the city schoolteacher she'd presented herself as. Before he could question her further, a voice called from outside. Granger, we know you're in there. Come out and talk. Logan moved cautiously to a small gap in one of the shutters. 3 men had dismounted about 50 yards from the cabin, using their horses as partial cover. He recognized one James Blackwell, a representative from the Southwestern Railroad Company who had approached him about selling land rights 6 months ago. That's Blackwell from the railroad, Logan told Sophia quietly. I turned down their offer to buy a right-of-way through my property. Looks like they've decided on a more aggressive approach. Granger, Blackwell called again. Be reasonable. All we want is access through the eastern section. You'll be well compensated. My land's not for sale, Logan shouted back. Not a single acre. Now get off my property before my men arrive and remove you. Blackwell conferred briefly with his companions. You're being stubborn for no reason, Granger. Progress is coming whether you like it or not. Progress, Logan muttered to Sophia. They want to cut my ranch in half with their tracks, scare off my cattle, and bring their workers and camp followers right through the heart of Whispering Pines. Sophia had moved to the other window, peering through a crack. There's a 4th man, she whispered urgently. Circling around behind us. Logan cursed under his breath, moving to check. She was right, a 4th rider was making his way through the trees behind the cabin, likely planning to approach from the rear while Blackwell kept them distracted. Good eyes, Logan acknowledged. We need to watch both sides. Sophia surprised him by taking the old hunting rifle, checking its load with competent hands. I can cover the back, she said, noting his expression. My father believed girls should know how to shoot as well as boys, particularly on the frontier. The frontier. Logan raised an eyebrow. I thought you were from Chicago. A faint blush colored her cheeks. Recently from Chicago. I grew up in western Illinois when it was considerably less settled. My family moved to Chicago after my father was injured in an accident. Before Logan could process this new information, a shot splintered the window frame near his head. He ducked, returning fire and forcing Blackwell and his men to scatter for better cover. They're getting bolder, Logan said grimly. Mr. Granger, Sophia called from her position. The man in the back is trying to approach the door. Logan moved to her side, seeing the 4th man crouched and running toward the rear of the cabin. Without hesitation, Sophia raised the rifle, took careful aim, and fired. The man yelped as the bullet struck the ground directly in front of him, forcing him to dive behind a fallen log. Logan stared at her in amazement. It was a perfect warning shot close enough to scare the man but deliberately avoiding injury. "You're full of surprises, Miss Summers," he said. "So I've been told," she replied, already reloading the rifle with swift, practiced movements. The standoff continued for another 20 minutes, with occasional shots exchanged but neither side gaining advantage. Logan's concern grew as the afternoon war on Henry should have arrived with reinforcements by now. Then, just as Logan was contemplating a more aggressive strategy, the distant sound of hoofbeats reached them. Sophia heard it too, her face lighting with hope. "Is that your men?" Logan listened carefully. "Too many horses, sounds like." His expression changed to one of disbelief, then reluctant amusement. "Sounds like the whole damn town is coming." Indeed, as they watched through the window gaps, a procession of riders appeared, Henry leading the way, followed by Logan's ranch hands, the town sheriff, and what looked like half the population of Santa Rosa. Blackwell and his men, seeing themselves suddenly outnumbered, hastily mounted their horses. "This isn't over, Granger," Blackwell shouted before spurring his horse away, his companions following quickly. Logan unbarred the door as the townspeople approached, stepping out with Sophia close behind. The collective gasp from the assembled crowd might have been comical under different circumstances, as they took in the sight of Logan's bandaged arm and Sophia's dust-covered but dignified presence. "Logan, Miss Summers, are you both all right?" Henry called, dismounting quickly. "We're fine," Logan replied, eyeing the crowd suspiciously. "What's all this, Henry? Did you bring the entire town?" Henry had the good grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Well, word got around that Miss Summers had arrived to meet you and folks were curious. Then we heard the shots." "Word got around," Logan repeated, his suspicions about Henry's involvement growing stronger. "And how exactly did that happen?" Before Henry could respond, Mrs. Finch pushed her way forward through the crowd. "Oh, thank heavens you're both safe." "When those horses came back without you, we feared the worst." Sheriff Davis, a stocky man with an impressive mustache, approached next. "Blackwell and his railroad boys again, I take it?" Logan nodded grimly. "They've graduated from making offers to making threats." The sheriff shook his head. "I'll send some deputies after them, but they'll claim it was all a misunderstanding. Railroads got powerful friends in the territorial government." As the crowd moved closer, Logan noticed the way they were looking at Sophia with undisguised curiosity and something that looked suspiciously like approval. Several of the town's women were whispering behind their hands, shooting meaningful glances between Logan and his unexpected companion. "Perhaps we should return to the house," Logan suggested to Sophia, uncomfortable with the scrutiny. "You've had quite an introduction to Whispering Pines." "Indeed," she agreed, seeming equally aware of the attention. "Though I must say it's been illuminating." As they prepared to leave, Thunder and Daisy having been recovered by the ranch hands, Logan pulled Henry aside. "When we get back," he said in a low voice, "you and I are going to have a long conversation about advertisements in Chicago newspapers." Henry met his gaze steadily. "Looking forward to it, boss." The ride back to the main house was a strange procession, Logan and Sophia in front, followed by Henry and the ranch hands, with various townspeople straggling behind, apparently invited by Mrs. Finch to some sort of impromptu gathering at Whispering Pines. "I apologize for all of this," Logan said to Sophia as they rode side by side. "Santa Rosa is usually a quiet town. You seem to have caused quite a stir." Sophia glanced back at the following crowd, a small smile playing at her lips. "It appears we both have." She turned back to him, her expression growing serious. Mr. Granger, I think we both know by now who might have sent those letters. Logan nodded grimly. Henry's handwriting has always been better than mine, and he's worked here long enough to know all the details that were in those letters. He seems to care about you a great deal, Sophia observed. Though his methods are unconventional, Logan snorted. That's a charitable way of putting it. When they reached the main house, Logan was dismayed to find that Mrs. Finch had somehow raced ahead and prepared what appeared to be an impromptu reception. The porch was swept, fresh flowers adorned the tables, and the smell of baking wafted from the kitchen. What in tarnation? Logan muttered as he helped Sophia dismount. Mrs. Finch bustled out, beaming. I thought after such an ordeal, a little celebration of your safe return would be in order. I've made my special apple pie and lemonade for everyone. Logan opened his mouth to protest, then caught sight of Sophia's expression, a mixture of amusement and genuine appreciation for the housekeeper's efforts. He sighed, recognizing a lost cause when he saw one. Thank you, Mrs. Finch, he said instead. That's very thoughtful. As the impromptu gathering got underway, Logan found himself watching Sophia interact with the townspeople. She handled their curious questions with grace, neither confirming nor denying the assumption that she had come as his mail-order bride, but instead redirecting conversations to neutral topics. She was speaking with the town schoolteacher, Miss Gardner, when Henry approached Logan, 2 glasses of lemonade in hand. Quite a woman, the foreman observed, offering 1 glass to Logan. Smart, brave, good with a rifle from what I hear. You had no right, Logan said quietly, accepting the lemonade despite his anger. Playing games with people's lives. Henry sighed, looking suddenly older than his 50-plus years. I watched you build walls around yourself after your mother died, Logan, walls getting higher every year. This place, he gestured to the ranch around them, it was built for a family. Your father didn't work himself to death so his son could live here alone, scaring off neighbors with a rifle. So you took it upon yourself to find me a wife, Logan challenged. I took it upon myself to give you a chance at happiness, Henry corrected. Miss Summers answered the advertisement because she was looking for something too. I didn't force either of you into anything. Except you forged letters in my name, Logan pointed out, made promises I never authorized. I wrote what I knew to be true about you and this place, Henry said stubbornly. Things you'd never say yourself, but that needed saying. Logan fell silent, watching as Sophia laughed at something Miss Gardner said, the sound carrying across the yard. He couldn't deny that there was something compelling about her, a strength and intelligence that matched her undeniable beauty. She deserves better than deception, Logan finally said, even well-intentioned deception. Then offer her truth, Henry suggested simply. She came 2,000 miles on the strength of a few letters. Might be worth finding out why. Before Logan could respond, Sheriff Davis approached, his expression serious despite the festive atmosphere. Logan, a word, he said quietly. About Blackwell and his men. Logan excused himself from Henry, moving to a quieter corner of the yard with the sheriff. I've had reports of the railroad using strong-arm tactics with other landowners, Davis said once they were alone. Mysterious fires, cattle scattered, fences cut. Nothing that could be directly tied to them, but the timing suspicious. Logan frowned. You think they'll try something like that here? I think they want your land badly, and Blackwell's not known for taking no for an answer. The sheriff glanced toward Sophia. Might not be the safest time for a lady visitor. She's not staying, Logan said automatically, though the words felt hollow even to himself. Sheriff Davis raised an eyebrow. Whole town seems to think differently. He clapped Logan on the shoulder. Just watch your back. I'll have deputies ride by when they can, but we're stretched thin these days." As the sheriff moved away, Logan found himself looking for Sophia again. She had moved to the edge of the gathering, standing alone for a moment as she gazed out at the ranch stretching before her. The late afternoon sun caught in her honey-colored hair, creating a halo effect that made Logan's chest tighten in a way he wasn't prepared for. Making a decision, he walked toward her, his footsteps deliberate in the soft grass. "Quite a welcome the town's given you," he said as he reached her side. Sophia turned, her smile small but genuine. "They seem like good people, curious but kind." "They are," Logan agreed, realizing he'd spent so many years keeping the townspeople at a distance that he'd almost forgotten this truth. "Miss Summers, Sophia, I owe you an apology. It seems my foreman has taken unforgivable liberties with both our lives." "Has he?" she asked, studying his face carefully. "Henry wrote the letters, I presume," Logan nodded, "though he claims he only wrote what I would have if I'd had his eloquence." "And did he," Sophia asked directly, "write what you would have?" Logan hesitated, unused to such directness from anyone, much less a woman he barely knew. Yet something about Sophia Summers demanded honesty. "Parts of it," he admitted. "The description of the ranch, the work here that was accurate, the rest." He trailed off, uncertain how to continue. "The rest being the parts about wanting a partner, about loneliness and building a life together," Sophia supplied. When Logan didn't immediately respond, she continued, "I should tell you something, Mr. Granger. I wasn't entirely truthful either." Logan felt a stab of disappointment, though he had no right to it. "Oh, I told you I was a schoolteacher in Chicago, which is true, but I didn't tell you why I answered an advertisement from a stranger in New Mexico territory." She looked out across the ranch again. "My father owned land once, not unlike this. Smaller but good land in western Illinois. He built everything from nothing like your father did." "What happened?" Logan asked, hearing the pain beneath her matter-of-fact tone. "The railroad happened," she said simply. "They wanted a right-of-way through our property. My father refused. There was a fire, supposedly an accident that destroyed our barn and injured him badly. Medical bills mounted. Eventually, he had no choice but to sell, for far less than it was worth." Logan felt a cold anger building as the pieces fell into place. "That's why you asked if Blackwell's men might try to burn us out?" Sophia nodded. "My father never recovered physically or spiritually. He was a man defined by his land, his ability to work it. Without that—" She took a deep breath. "When I saw the advertisement, your advertisement, as I believed describing a man defending his land against the same forces that destroyed my father, it resonated with me." "You came here to fight the railroad?" Logan asked, confused. "I came here because I recognized something in those letters," Sophia corrected him. "A love of land, of building something that lasts. Values my father instilled in me that I couldn't express teaching grammar to privileged children in Chicago." A new understanding dawned on Logan as he looked at this remarkable woman. She hadn't come seeking a husband out of desperation or naivety. She'd come seeking purpose, a cause she believed in, perhaps even revenge against the forces that had destroyed her family. "So we've both been manipulated," Logan said finally. "You by letters I didn't write, me by a foreman who thinks he knows what's best for me." "Perhaps," Sophia agreed, "but that doesn't mean the outcome is necessarily wrong." She met his gaze directly. "I still believe in what those letters represented, Mr. Granger. A life built on one's own terms, land protected for future generations. Would you have me leave simply because the invitation came from Henry rather than from you directly?" Logan felt something shift inside him, walls he'd carefully constructed over years beginning to crack. This woman understood what Whispering Pines meant to him in a way few others could. "No," he said finally. "I wouldn't have you leave. Not yet." He hesitated, then added, "And I think, after all we've been through today, you might call me Logan." Her smile genuine, warm, and just for him made his heart beat faster. "Logan, then," she agreed. As the gathering continued around them, Logan found himself considering possibilities he'd long since dismissed from his life. Henry's meddling had been inexcusable, but perhaps, just perhaps, the outcome might be something neither of them could have anticipated. In the days that followed, Logan found himself in the unusual position of having a house guest at Whispering Pines. Sophia had accepted his reluctant invitation to stay while they sorted things out, a phrase vague enough to satisfy propriety while allowing them both time to consider their situation. Mrs. Finch, practically glowing with satisfaction, had prepared the guest room that had stood empty since Logan's mother's death. The housekeeper now found reasons to visit daily rather than her usual 3 times a week, bringing fresh baking and village gossip in equal measure. To Logan's surprise, Sophia fit into ranch life with remarkable ease. She rose early, helped Mrs. Finch with breakfast preparations, and seemed genuinely interested in learning about the operation of Whispering Pines. On her 3rd day, Logan found her in the barn with Miguel, his most experienced ranch hand, learning the finer points of caring for a newborn calf whose mother had died in birthing. "She has good hands," Miguel told Logan appreciatively. "Gentle but not afraid to get dirty." "Not like most city ladies," Logan had to agree. There was nothing affected or fragile about Sophia Summers. She approached each task with the same quiet competence she'd shown during their confrontation with Blackwell's men, whether it was bottle feeding a calf or helping Mrs. Finch preserve the summer's last peaches. In the evenings, they fell into a comfortable routine. After dinner, they would sit on the porch if the weather was fair, or by the fire in the parlor if it wasn't, and talk. Logan found himself speaking more in those evenings than he had in years, sharing stories of growing up on Whispering Pines, of his father's dreams for the ranch, of the challenges and satisfactions of the life he'd chosen. In turn, Sophia told him of her childhood in Illinois, of her father's fierce independence and her mother's gentle wisdom. She spoke of her years teaching in Chicago with a mixture of pride and frustration, pride in her students' accomplishments, frustration with a society that valued appearances over substance. "I was never quite right for Chicago society," she admitted one evening as they watched the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "Too outspoken, too practical. My principal once told me I was alarmingly direct for a young lady of breeding." Logan chuckled. "I can believe that." Sophia shot him a look of mock offense. "I'll have you know that directness is considered a virtue in some circles." "Including mine," Logan assured her. "I've had my fill of people who talk around what they mean. It's refreshing to know exactly where you stand with someone." "And where do I stand with you, Logan Granger?" Sophia asked, suddenly serious. The question caught him off guard. They had been circling each other cautiously for days, both aware of the unconventional circumstances that had brought them together, neither quite ready to define what was developing between them. "You stand," Logan began, then paused, searching for the right words. "You stand as someone I've come to respect a great deal, someone who understands this land and what it means in a way few others do." Sophia nodded, accepting his careful answer without pushing for more. "And you stand as a man who lives by his principles, even when they're inconvenient." "I respect that more than I can say." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Logan found himself studying her profile in the fading light, noting the determined set of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes, the way a few strands of hair had escaped her practical braid to frame her face. "We should go in," he said finally, breaking the spell. "Early start tomorrow." If Sophia was disappointed by his retreat, she didn't show it. "Of course. I promised Mrs. Finch I'd help her with the jam making." As they rose to go inside, a distant flash of light caught Logan's attention. He frowned, moving to the edge of the porch for a better view. "What is it?" Sophia asked, immediately alert to his concern. "Not sure," Logan replied, still scanning the darkness. "Thought I saw something near the east pasture." They both watched for several more minutes, but the light, whatever it was, didn't reappear. Still, Logan felt uneasy as they went inside, making a mental note to have the men check the eastern boundary at first light. His concerns proved justified when Henry rode in shortly after dawn, his expression grim. "Someone cut the fence along the east pasture," he reported as Logan met him in the yard. "About 100 yards worth. Lost maybe 30 head before we got it patched." Logan cursed under his breath. "Blackwell. Can't prove it," Henry cautioned, "but I'd bet my last dollar." Too clean a cut for wild animals, and the timing suspicious. 30 head, Logan muttered. It wasn't devastating he ran over 500 cattle, but it was a clear message. "Have Miguel and the boys round up what they can. I'll ride out and check the damage myself." As he turned toward the stable, Logan found Sophia standing on the porch, already dressed for riding, her expression resolute. "I'm coming with you," she said, not a question but a statement. Logan started to object, then thought better of it. "Saddle up, then." It's not a pretty sight when men decide to wage war on another man's livelihood. They rode east in the cool morning air, the sun just beginning to warm the landscape. Logan's mind was filled with calculations: the cost of the lost cattle, the time needed to repair the fence properly, the likelihood of further attacks. But beneath these practical concerns lay a deeper anger. This land, this life he'd built, was being threatened not for any principled reason but for profit and convenience. "You're quiet," Sophia observed as they crested a hill overlooking the eastern pasture. "Thinking," Logan replied shortly. Then, seeing her expression, he softened his tone. "Sorry. This brings back memories. My father faced similar tactics from land speculators before the railroad even came through. It wore him down over time. The constant vigilance, the feeling that everything he'd built could be taken away." "Is that what happened to him?" Sophia asked gently. Logan shook his head. "Heart gave out. Doctors said it was from years of hard work, but I always wondered if it wasn't also the strain of fighting battles that never seemed to end." They reached the damaged fence line, where several of Logan's men were already at work replacing posts and stringing new wire. The cut was indeed clean done with wire cutters, not broken by animals or weather. "Miguel found tracks," one of the ranch hands reported. "4 riders, heading east toward town. Some of our cattle were driven that way too." Logan dismounted, examining the cut fence with practiced eyes. "Professional job. They knew exactly where to hit us away from the bunkhouse, downwind so the dogs wouldn't catch their scent." "The railroad employs more than engineers," Sophia observed, her voice tight with controlled anger. "My father faced similar tactics." Logan looked up at her, still mounted on Daisy. The morning sun illuminated her face, highlighting the determination in her eyes and the set of her jaw. Something stirred in him at the sight: admiration, certainly, but something deeper as well, something he wasn't quite ready to name. "We'll get through this," he said with more confidence than he felt. "Blackwell doesn't know who he's dealing with." "No," Sophia agreed, a small smile touching her lips. "I don't believe he does." They spent the morning helping repair the fence and searching for the scattered cattle. By midday, they'd recovered about half of the missing herd, with ranch hands still out looking for the rest. Logan and Sophia returned to the main house, dusty and tired but satisfied with their progress. As they approached, Logan noticed an unfamiliar buggy parked in front of the house. His hand instinctively moved toward his holstered revolver. "Expecting visitors?" Sophia asked, noticing his tension. "No," Logan replied grimly. "Stay behind me." They approached cautiously, but before they reached the house, Mrs. Finch appeared on the porch, waving cheerfully. "There you are," she called. "You have guests. Judge Patterson and his wife have come all the way from Santa Rosa to pay their respects." Logan relaxed slightly at the mention of the judge, a well-respected figure in the county whom he knew by reputation more than personal acquaintance. Still, the timing was suspicious. "What would the judge want with me?" he muttered to Sophia as they dismounted. "Perhaps he heard about the fence," Sophia suggested. "Or perhaps—" She hesitated, color rising in her cheeks. "Perhaps what?" Logan prompted. "Perhaps he's heard that you have a guest of the female persuasion staying at your ranch," Sophia finished, looking both amused and embarrassed. "Small towns have active grapevines," Logan, understanding, dawned. "They think that you and that we're—" "I believe they might," Sophia confirmed. "Mrs. Finch has been rather effusive in town about your mail-order bride from Chicago." Logan groaned. "That woman will be the death of me." Despite his discomfort, Logan found himself oddly reluctant to correct the misunderstanding as they entered the house to find Judge Patterson and his wife taking tea in the parlor. Mrs. Patterson, a plump, pleasant woman in her 50s, beamed at the sight of them. "Oh, my dear," she exclaimed, rising to take Sophia's hands in hers. "We've heard so much about you. I simply had to come and welcome you to our little community." Judge Patterson, a distinguished man with silver hair and keen eyes, gave Logan an appraising look. "Granger, about time you settled down. This ranch is too much for one man alone." "Judge, Mrs. Patterson," Logan began awkwardly. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "We understand perfectly," Mrs. Patterson interrupted, patting his arm. "Young love needs no explanation. And in these dangerous times, with unscrupulous men threatening honest ranchers, a man needs a good woman by his side." Logan and Sophia exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. The misunderstanding might actually work to their advantage, giving Blackwell and his men pause if they believed Logan had additional support at the ranch. "Thank you for your welcome," Sophia said smoothly, saving Logan from further explanation. "It's been quite an adjustment, but Logan has made me feel very much at home." The conversation that followed was a masterclass in social navigation, with Sophia deftly fielding questions about her background and relationship with Logan without actually confirming or denying their supposed engagement. Logan, for his part, found himself increasingly impressed by her poise and quick thinking. When the Pattersons finally departed, promising to host them for dinner in town soon, Logan and Sophia stood on the porch watching the buggy disappear down the long drive. "You didn't correct them," Logan observed. "Neither did you," Sophia countered, a hint of challenge in her voice. Logan rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly feeling awkward. It seemed complicated and potentially useful given the situation with Blackwell. "Precisely my thinking," Sophia agreed, "though Mrs. Finch will be insufferable now." Logan couldn't help but laugh, tension breaking. "She's probably already planning the wedding." The word hung between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to address directly. After a moment, Sophia changed the subject. "What will you do about the fence and the cattle?" Logan was grateful for the return to practical matters. Double the night watch for starters. I'll ride into town tomorrow, speak with Sheriff Davis about filing a formal complaint, though I doubt it will come to much. I'd like to come with you, Sophia said. I have a few ideas that might help. Logan raised an eyebrow. Ideas? Let's just say my time in Chicago wasn't spent solely teaching grammar, Sophia replied with a mysterious smile. I learned a thing or two about how powerful interests operate and how they can sometimes be countered. The following morning found them riding into Santa Rosa together, Logan still curious about Sophia's cryptic statement. The town was busier than usual, with a cattle auction bringing ranchers from throughout the county. Their first stop was the sheriff's office, where Davis listened to their account of the fence cutting with growing concern. Not the first case I've heard, the sheriff admitted, leaning back in his creaking chair. The Wilkerson place had similar trouble last month and the Mendoza ranch before that. Can't prove it's railroad men, though. No witnesses, no direct evidence. So they just get away with it, Logan demanded, frustration evident in his voice. I didn't say that, Davis replied mildly. Just that we need to be smarter about catching them. Sophia, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. Sheriff, would you be willing to set up additional patrols near the vulnerable ranches? Not every night, you don't have the men for that, but unpredictably, so potential troublemakers couldn't anticipate when you'd be around. Davis considered this. Could do that. Won't catch them all, but might make them think twice. And what about the territorial newspaper? Sophia continued. Would they be interested in a story about mysterious fence cuttings coincidentally affecting ranchers who have refused railroad offers? Logan looked at her in surprise. The suggestion was bold, directly challenging the railroad's influence through public exposure. Sheriff Davis stroked his mustache thoughtfully. Gordon over at the Gazette might run such a story. He's got no love for the railroad after they refused to advertise with him. He fixed Sophia with a curious look. You seem to know something about these matters, Miss Summers. My father was a newspaperman before he was a rancher, Sophia explained. He believed in the power of public opinion to check even the most powerful interests. After leaving the sheriff's office, they made their way to the Santa Rosa Gazette, where Sophia charmed editor Gordon into considering a story about the recent incidents. By the time they left, Gordon was promising to look into not just the fence cuttings, but also other suspicious activities that might be linked to railroad expansion. You're full of surprises, Logan commented as they walked down the main street toward the general store. I wouldn't have thought of approaching the newspaper. Sometimes the most effective weapon isn't a gun but information, Sophia replied. The railroad relies on secrecy for these tactics. Expose them to public scrutiny, and they may reconsider. As they passed the bank, Logan noticed James Blackwell emerging with several well-dressed men he didn't recognize. Blackwell spotted them at the same moment, his expression darkening. Granger, he called, approaching with false cordiality. What brings you to town? Reconsidering our generous offer, perhaps? Just reporting a crime, Logan replied coolly. Someone cut my fence and scattered my cattle. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you, Blackwell? The railroad man's smile didn't reach his eyes. Cattle rustlers are a menace to honest ranchers. Perhaps if you had the protection of a powerful company like Southwestern Railroad, such incidents would be less likely. Is that a threat or a confession? Sophia asked, her voice carrying clearly in the busy street. Several passers-by slowed to listen. Blackwell's gaze shifted to her, his expression hardening. I don't believe we've been introduced, Miss Summers. Sophia Summers, she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. Mr. Granger's fiancée. Logan managed to keep his expression neutral, though his heart skipped at her bold claim. The strategic value was immediately apparent as Blackwell reassessed the situation, clearly thrown by this unexpected development. "Congratulations," Blackwell said stiffly. "Though I wouldn't plan on a long and peaceful life at Whispering Pines, progress waits for no man or woman." "We'll take our chances," Logan replied, placing a protective hand at the small of Sophia's back. "Good day, Blackwell." As they continued down the street, Logan leaned closer to Sophia. "Fiancé," he murmured. "It seemed expedient," she replied, a hint of color in her cheeks. You saw how it made him recalculate. He was expecting a lone rancher, not a united front. "So it was purely tactical?" Logan asked, surprised by his own disappointment at the explanation. Sophia glanced up at him, something unreadable in her expression. "Let's just say it served multiple purposes," she said enigmatically, before turning her attention to the display in the general store window. Their return to Whispering Pines that afternoon was marked by a subtle but significant shift in their relationship. The pretense of engagement, however tactical its origin, had brought the unspoken attraction between them to the surface. Logan found himself more aware of Sophia's presence than ever, the grace of her movements, the intelligence in her conversations, the way she had so quickly become essential to the rhythms of ranch life. That evening after dinner, as they sat on the porch watching twilight settle over the land, Logan finally broached the subject that had been on his mind all day. "What you said to Blackwell today," he began carefully, "about being my fiancé. I've been thinking that perhaps we should discuss what happens next." Sophia turned to look at him, her face partly in shadow. "What did you have in mind?" Logan took a deep breath. "You came here under false pretenses, but these past 2 weeks, they've been the best I can remember in years. You understand this land, this life, in a way I never expected to find in another person." "Logan," Sophia began, but he raised a hand, needing to finish his thought before courage deserted him. "I'm not proposing marriage, not yet. That would be premature for both of us. But I am proposing that you stay. Not as a guest, but as a partner in Whispering Pines. Give us time to know each other properly without deception or pretense, and if, after a suitable period, we find that what's growing between us is strong enough." He trailed off, uncertain how to continue. Sophia was silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable in the gathering darkness. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "When I came here, I was seeking something I'd lost, a connection to land, to a way of life I valued. I didn't expect to find it so completely, or to find someone who embodied those values so thoroughly." She reached out, her hand finding his in the darkness. "I would be honored to stay as your partner, Logan Granger, to see where this path leads us." Relief and joy surged through Logan as he squeezed her hand gently. "Then it's settled. We'll face Blackwell and whatever else comes together." "Together," Sophia agreed, her smile visible even in the dim light of early evening. They sat in companionable silence as stars began to appear overhead, neither feeling the need to define further what had just transpired between them. It was enough, for now, to know that they had chosen a shared path forward. The next morning brought news that Gordon had indeed published a front-page story in the Gazette about the suspicious pattern of vandalism against ranchers who had refused railroad offers. The article didn't directly accuse Southwestern Railroad, but laid out the facts in a way that left readers to draw their own conclusions. "This won't make you popular with Blackwell," Henry observed as he showed Logan the newspaper over breakfast. "I was never going to win any popularity contests with him anyway," Logan replied. Sophia, sitting across the table, hid a smile behind her coffee cup. Over the following weeks, a new rhythm established itself at Whispering Pines. Sophia took on increasing responsibility for the household management, working alongside Mrs. Finch and gradually putting her own stamp on the main house. Faded curtains were replaced. Rooms that had been closed since Logan's mother's death were opened and aired, and flowers from the long-neglected garden once again brightened the tables. More significantly, Sophia began accompanying Logan on his daily rounds of the ranch, learning the operation from the ground up. She had a natural affinity for the land and a quick mind for the business aspects of ranching. By the end of the first month, she was keeping the books with greater efficiency than Logan ever had, identifying opportunities to increase profits and reduce waste. The ranch hands, initially skeptical of a woman's involvement in ranch operations, gradually came to respect her practical knowledge and willingness to learn. Miguel, in particular, took pride in teaching her the finer points of cattle management, impressed by her ability to absorb information and apply it. "The lady has ranching in her blood," he told Logan one evening as they watched Sophia confidently examine a calf for signs of illness. "Not everyone can learn these things so quickly. Her father was a rancher before losing his land to the railroad," Logan explained. "She grew up with much of this knowledge, even if she hasn't used it in years." Visitors to Whispering Pines, once rare, became more common as word spread of the changes taking place. Judge Patterson and his wife returned for dinner, bringing with them other prominent citizens of Santa Rosa eager to meet the woman who had, in their minds, tamed the reclusive Logan Granger. Logan found these social obligations less burdensome than expected, particularly with Sophia by his side. Her ease in conversation, her genuine interest in the community, and her ability to navigate social complexities made these gatherings almost enjoyable. Through it all, the relationship between Logan and Sophia deepened. They had agreed to a period of partnership before considering marriage, but the line between business arrangement and courtship blurred with each passing day. Their conversations extended late into the evening, ranging from practical ranch matters to philosophy, politics, and personal dreams. Logan found himself sharing thoughts he'd never articulated to anyone, while Sophia revealed layers of her character and history that made him admire her all the more. Physical attraction simmered beneath these intellectual connections. A brush of hands while passing tools, the proximity of their bodies during horseback rides, the way Logan's heart raced when he caught Sophia looking at him with undisguised affection, all spoke to feelings that grew stronger by the day. Yet both maintained a careful propriety, aware of the unconventional nature of their arrangement and the scrutiny of the community. Logan had given Sophia his mother's bedroom at the far end of the upstairs hall, while he continued to occupy the master bedroom downstairs. Mrs. Finch's constant presence during daylight hours and Henry's discreet oversight ensured that no hint of scandal attached to their living arrangement. The confrontation with Blackwell and the railroad seemed to have reached a stalemate. The newspaper article had indeed had an effect, drawing territorial attention to the suspicious incidents. Sheriff Davis reported that the fence cuttings and cattle disturbances had ceased, not just at Whispering Pines but throughout the county. "Don't think they've given up," the sheriff cautioned during a visit to the ranch. "More likely regrouping, looking for another angle. Let them come," Logan replied with newfound confidence. "We'll be ready." The we came naturally now, Logan and Sophia facing challenges together. The ranch that had once been his solitary kingdom had become their shared domain, stronger for the partnership. As summer gave way to fall, the golden light of late September bathed Whispering Pines in a warm glow. The cattle were fat and healthy, the harvest from the kitchen garden abundant, and preparations for winter well underway. Logan found himself more content than he could remember being since childhood, the constant tension he'd carried for years gradually easing under Sophia's influence. One crisp morning, they rode out to Silver Creek, now a favorite spot for both of them. The water ran clear and cool, leaves from the cottonwoods drifting on its surface in splashes of yellow and orange. They dismounted, letting the horses drink while they walked along the bank. "I've been thinking," Logan said, breaking a comfortable silence, "about the future, about us." Sophia looked up at him, her blue eyes reflecting the autumn sky. "Oh, it's been almost 3 months since you arrived," Logan continued. 3 months of working together, learning each other's ways, building something neither of us anticipated. "The best surprises are the ones we don't plan for," Sophia observed, her voice soft. Logan stopped walking, turning to face her directly. "I promised you time for us both to be certain about what we wanted. I find that I'm certain now, Sophia. More certain than I've ever been about anything." He took her hands in his, noting how perfectly they fit together despite the calluses both had earned from ranch work. "I love you," he said simply. "Not just for what you've brought to Whispering Pines, though that's been remarkable. I love your mind, your spirit, your determination. I love the way you see this land as I do, not as property, but as a living legacy worth protecting." Sophia's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but her smile was radiant. "And I love you, Logan Granger, for your integrity, your strength, and the tenderness you try to hide beneath that gruff exterior." She squeezed his hands. "I came here seeking a connection to the life I'd lost. I found something far more valuable, a future I never dared imagine." Logan released her hands only to reach into his pocket, withdrawing a small velvet box. "I rode into Santa Fe last week, while you were helping Mrs. Finch with the preserves." He opened the box to reveal a ring, a modest diamond flanked by small sapphires that echoed the color of her eyes. "It was my mother's. I had it sized for you." Sophia's breath caught. "Logan, Sophia Summers, will you marry me?" Not because of forged letters or pretense or strategic advantage against railroad men, but because we've found in each other something rare and worth building a life around. "Yes," she whispered, tears now flowing freely. "With all my heart, yes." Logan slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into his arms for their first true kiss, a moment that had been building since that first day when she walked onto his land, unarmed but for her courage and determination. Her lips were soft beneath his, her body fitting against him as though made to be there. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Logan rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably tell Henry he was right," he murmured, "though I hate to give him the satisfaction." Sophia laughed, the sound mingling with the burble of Silver Creek. "I think he already knows. Some things don't need saying aloud to be understood." They rode back to the main house hand in hand, the horses following the familiar trail without guidance. As the buildings of Whispering Pines came into view, Logan felt a sense of rightness settle over him. The ranch that had been his sanctuary, and his prison, was transformed now not by any physical change, but by the presence of the woman beside him, who had walked into his life and claimed his heart when he least expected it. News of their engagement spread quickly through Santa Rosa and the surrounding county. Congratulations poured in, along with gifts and invitations. Mrs. Finch was beside herself with joy, already planning a wedding feast to remember. Henry accepted Logan's grudging thanks with dignified pleasure, though his eyes twinkled with unmistakable satisfaction at the outcome of his scheme. "Just don't ever try anything like this again," Logan warned him. "Next time, speak plainly if you have concerns." "Won't be a next time," Henry replied confidently. "You've got her now to keep you honest." The wedding was set for November, before the winter weather made travel difficult for guests. Sophia wrote to her few remaining friends in Chicago, inviting them to the ceremony, but explaining that Santa Rosa was now her home. Logan found himself unexpectedly touched by her complete commitment to Whispering Pines and the life they would build together. As the wedding day approached, there was no sign of further trouble from Blackwell or the railroad. Sheriff Davis reported that Southwestern had turned its attention to a different route, purchasing land to the south that would bypass Whispering Pines entirely. "Your newspaper strategy worked," he told them during a visit to finalize his role in the upcoming ceremony. "That, combined with Judge Patterson's interest in the case, he owns considerable land himself. You know, railroad decided you weren't worth the trouble. Or perhaps they realized that some things can't be bought or bullied away," Sophia suggested, her hand finding Logan's as they sat together on the porch. The wedding day dawned clear and cool, the November sky a deep blue overhead. The ceremony was held on the grounds of Whispering Pines, beneath the ancient cottonwood that had sheltered generations of Grangers. Logan, standing with Henry beside him as best man, watched in awe as Sophia approached on Judge Patterson's arm. She wore a gown of ivory silk, elegant but practical, with her honey-colored hair arranged in a crown of autumn flowers. Her eyes never left Logan's as she walked toward him, her smile reflecting the joy he felt building in his own heart. The vows were simple but heartfelt promises of partnership, respect, and enduring love. When Judge Patterson pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up from the assembled guests echoed across the ranch, startling a flock of birds from a nearby tree. The celebration continued into the evening, with tables set up on the lawn and lanterns illuminating the festivities as darkness fell. Logan found moments throughout the day to marvel at the transformation of his life from solitary guardian of his inheritance to a man blessed with love and partnership he had never thought to find. As the last guests departed and quiet settled over Whispering Pines once more, Logan and Sophia stood on the porch of what was now truly their home. The stars spread across the New Mexico sky in brilliant profusion, the same stars that had witnessed his father's dreams, his own lonely vigil, and now this new beginning. "Happy?" Logan asked softly, his arm around his wife's waist. "Completely," Sophia replied, leaning into his embrace. "This is where I was always meant to be, even if I took a roundabout path to find it." "Remind me to thank Henry properly," Logan said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "His methods were questionable, but I can't argue with the results." Sophia laughed, turning in his arms to face him. "A wise man knows when to admit he needed a little help. A wise man also knows when to count his blessings," Logan replied, drawing her closer. "And you, Sophia Granger, are the greatest blessing I could have imagined." As their lips met beneath the vast New Mexico sky, Logan knew that Whispering Pines had truly fulfilled its purpose at last. What his father had built as a legacy, what Logan had guarded with such fierce determination, would now flourish under their joint stewardship: a home, a livelihood, and most importantly, a love that had claimed them both when they least expected it. The years that followed brought changes to Whispering Pines that Logan could never have envisioned during his solitary days. The ranch expanded, not just in acreage as they purchased the abandoned Miller property, but in purpose and vitality. Sophia's influence transformed the main house into a true home, warm and welcoming to visitors and workers alike. Her practical education background found new expression as she established a small school for the children of ranch hands and neighboring families, meeting 3 days a week in a converted storage building near the main house. Logan, once so reluctant to engage with the broader community, found himself increasingly involved in county affairs. Judge Patterson, impressed by his integrity and straightforward manner, encouraged him to serve on various committees addressing land use and water rights. His first-hand experience with railroad tactics made him a valuable advocate for smaller ranchers facing similar pressures. Their first child, a son they named James Henry Granger, arrived a year after their wedding. Logan, initially terrified by the tiny, red-faced infant his wife placed in his arms, soon became a devoted father. Little James thrived in the ranch environment, toddling after his father from an early age, solemnly observing cattle operations from the safety of Logan's arms. "He has your serious expression," Sophia teased as they watched 3-year-old James carefully examining a grasshopper in the garden. "And your focus, but your curiosity," Logan countered, smiling as their son released the insect with gentle care. "And thankfully, your kindness." Their family grew again with the arrival of twins William and Elizabeth when James was 4. The house that had once echoed with emptiness now rang with children's laughter and the constant motion of family life. Henry, now approaching 70 but still spry, took on the role of honorary grandfather with enthusiasm, teaching the children to ride almost as soon as they could walk. Mrs. Finch, who had finally been persuaded to move into a comfortable cottage on the property rather than making the daily journey from town, spoiled them shamelessly with cookies and stories. Through it all, the partnership between Logan and Sophia deepened. They faced the inevitable challenges of ranch life together: drought seasons, market fluctuations, occasional disputes with neighbors over water access or straying cattle. Logan found that problems that once would have driven him to isolation and brooding now became manageable when shared with Sophia's practical wisdom and unflagging support. In return, he offered her the security and purpose she had sought all her life, not as gifts bestowed, but as the natural outcome of their equal partnership. Together, they built Whispering Pines into not just a successful ranch, but a cornerstone of the community, hosting gatherings that brought neighbors together and offering help to those in need. Blackwell and the railroad faded into memory as the years passed. The southern route proved less profitable than anticipated, and the Southwestern Railroad Company eventually merged with a larger operation based in California. When news reached them that Blackwell had been removed from his position following financial irregularities, neither Logan nor Sophia felt the need to celebrate. They had moved beyond that chapter of their lives. On their 10th anniversary, Logan surprised Sophia with a project he had been working on secretly for months: a gazebo built beside Silver Creek, at the spot where he had proposed. Constructed of local pine and designed to capture the best views of both the creek and the distant mountains, it quickly became their favorite retreat, a place to escape the busy household for quiet conversations at day's end. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Henry hadn't sent those letters?" Sophia asked one evening as they sat in the gazebo, watching the setting sun turn the creek to the liquid silver that had given it its name. Logan considered the question, his arm around her shoulders in the comfortable manner of long married couples. "I suspect I would still be that suspicious man with a rifle, keeping the world at bay." "I'm not so sure," Sophia mused. "That man was already changing, I think. He just needed a nudge in the right direction." "A nudge named Sophia Summers," Logan chuckled, "who walked onto my land unarmed but managed to claim the heart I thought I'd locked away for good." "Not entirely unarmed," she reminded him with a smile. "I did prove rather handy with a rifle when those railroad men attacked." "That you did," Logan agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "My fearless defender." From the direction of the house came the sound of children's voices, James calling for his younger siblings as they finished their evening chores. Soon, they would be expected back for dinner, returning to the joyful chaos of family life. "We should go in," Sophia said, though she made no move to rise. "Mrs. Finch will have dinner ready." "In a minute," Logan replied, tightening his arm around her. "I'm just taking a moment to be grateful." Sophia rested her head against his shoulder, understanding without need for explanation. After a peaceful silence, she spoke softly. "I am too. Every day." As twilight deepened around them and the first stars appeared overhead, they finally rose to return to the house that glowed with lamplight in the distance. Hand in hand, they walked the familiar path, their steps sure even in the gathering darkness. Whispering Pines Ranch stretched around them, not just land and buildings, but the living embodiment of a shared vision. What had begun with a desperate defense of inheritance had transformed into a legacy of partnership, one they would pass to their children along with the values that had brought them together: courage, integrity, and the understanding that the most precious things in life are those we build together, day by day. As they reached the house, the doors opened to spill light and welcome across the porch. Their children rushed out to meet them, followed by Mrs. Finch announcing dinner with mock severity that fooled no one. Logan paused at the threshold, taking in the scene, this family that had seemed an impossible dream a decade ago. "Coming, dear?" Sophia asked, her hand still in his, her eyes reflecting the love that had sustained them through all the seasons of their life together. "Right beside you," Logan replied, crossing into the warmth and light of home. "Always."